flamingos' mating season. And when the flamingos mate, they do not fly. However, that's of not too much concern to the people in the beautiful paddock area at Hialeah. This certainly is one of the most beautiful race courses and racing plans in all the world. And today the weather is perfect. Temperature in the 70s, and the track is fast. I'm Jim Mckay, and of course, everybody's talking about Seattle's Slew. Already they're saying, is he the greatest racehorse in the world? Is he another Secretariat? But there are other horses in the race. Coin Silver, for example, owned by C.V. Whitney, one of the best-known owners in the history of the American turf, but he's never won the Kentucky Derby. This could just be the year for him. And then there's Ruthie's Native, owned by Mrs. Ruth Perlmutter. This is the first and only racehorse owned by Mrs. Perlmutter and her husband. And then there's another well-regarded horse called Sir. Mr. Luis Navas, a Venezuelan, bought a horse called Cañonero II for $1,200 and went on to win the Kentucky Derby with him. He is the owner of Sir. So there are plenty of interesting possible stories here. Let's take a look right now at how they are being held in the betting. There you see the entry of Fort Preble and Jubilee at 12-1, Wine Treasure 20-1, and Jatsky, also lightly regarded, True Statement 15-1. But Seattle Slew, you saw there, being held at very short odds. And here are the rest of the horses. Let's take a look at the rest of the horses in the field. Seattle Slew at 3 to 5 right now. There is Sir at 8-1. That's the Venezuelan-owned horse. Then you have Coin Silver, Mr. Whitney's horse, at 8-1, and Ruthie's Native at 6-1. Now, working with me today will be a very well-informed man in the sport of horse racing, my colleague of many years at ABC, Howard Cosell, and with him, one of the great names in the American turf, Eddie Arcaro, a man with whom I've had the pleasure of working from here to the Aintree and the Grand National to the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Howard?
Thank you very much, Jim. Yes, indeed, it's a pleasure to be working today in this very rich and very traditional race in its own right, whether or not it be a prep for the Derby or for any of the Triple Crown races, with a friend of 25 years. Among his many achievements, he, of course, won more flamingos than any other jockey, 4 in all. He did it above Requested. He did it aboard Stirrup. He did it aboard Nashua. He did it aboard Bold Ruler. But right now, today, as Jim has already connoted, all the talk is about Seattle's Slew, Eddie. And how do you assess the horse at this point?
At this point, Howard, Seattle Slew looks like a real super horse. Now, he's got a lot more to prove, as we all know, but he does things against the clock, believe me, that I've never seen any other horse do.
You allude there to his time in the Champagne at Belmont last year, and again to his 7-furlong race here just a couple of weeks back.
Well, that's right. The last 2 races he's run, he's broke a track record and just puts in figures so easily that really he amazes me, and I've seen a lot of them run. Of course, today he's going to be tested at the route, and that's what we're all interested in seeing. How far can he carry this speed? I think it's quality speed, which is a big difference.
A throwback in its own way to Count Fleet, who never looked back.
That is correct. He won them all on the lead, and he could be that kind of speed.
All right, Eddie, I think we're going to get a quick gander at Seattle Slew in the paddock right now, and we want the whole country to take notice of this horse, because if Eddie's words stand up, and if everybody's consensus opinion about this brilliant-looking animal stands up, he will go down in history as one of the truly great thoroughbreds of all time. Now, I take it because you said earlier he still has something to prove. That's why 12 horses have been entered against him, to see if he can stand up to the distance.
Well, that's the only reason, because, as I said before, as far as he can go, he can beat any horse in America. But the classic races are not at a mile. They're at a 1.1 miles, and 1.25 miles, and 1.5 miles, and they're going to test him, Howard, and this is the only way to do it, run against him.
Well, right at the start, as you know, there's very little racing distance from the starting pole in this 1 1/8 race to the first turn. Can't we look for something here? Won't the start be especially important in terms of Ruthie's Native, a quick-breaking horse from the gate?
Yes, very important, by the way. Ruthie's Native is the only speed horse really in this race. You and I heard Craig Perrett the other morning say that he was going to test Seattle Slew. Now, he's going to try to take the lead away from him or go right with him. So we know he's going to come off the outside and make crowd this whole field.
Something funny just happening out here. To recount that, Jim Mckay.
Well, Howard, I don't know where he came from. I didn't even know there were iguanas in Florida, but darn it, if that isn't one out on the racetrack, in the race course at Hialeah, I would approach it much more gingerly than that, were it me. Holy mackerel. It's not an alligator. I'm pretty sure we've got glasses on it, and somebody says iguana. Definitely an iguana. And so the day of what they think will be Seattle Slew's Flamingo is also the day of the iguana at Hialeah. Gentlemen, you were saying.
Well, I was saying, I will say now, Jimmy, that if you've ever thought the bristles of a porpoise were stiff, don't ever touch an iguana, because they're impossible. We're about ready right now for the post parade, so let's run down the horses one by one. The number 1 horse out of the post position, number 5, is Fort Provel, one of the 2 horses in the race, owned by John Louis Levesque, breeding by Barachois out of Chaperon Rouge, and the jockey is Bobby Gaffneon. The number 1A horse is Ghibli, also owned by Jean-Louis Levesque. They're paired as an entry. He'll be racing out of the 12th hole. The jockey is Jeffrey Fell, and he tied Mickey Solomon for the Gulfstream Riding Championship. He's a good one. Number 2 horse is Wine Treasure. He'll be racing out of the first hole. The jockey is Ruben Hernandez, Wine Cup stable owner. Eddie Yowell, the trainer. He had the likes of Hail to All and Pass Catcher, past Belmont winners. The number 3 horse is Jatsky out of the 2nd hole. The number 4 horse is True Statement out of the 3rd hole. And the number 5 horse is the one that everyone is talking about. We're still looking, however, at Jatsky, which is a lightly rated horse. At the brunch 2 mornings ago, they called him the Polish horse. But his owner has faith in him, and that's why he has been entered in it. The number 4 horse, as we move to that, is True Statement. The jockey is Mickey Rivera. The owner, Elmendorf. The trainer, Johnny Weipert. And the breeding, he's out of no double by Specious. He's by no double out of Specious, correction. The number 5 horse, the one Eddie was talking about, the one Jimmy was talking about, the one everyone's been talking about, Seattle Slew, owned by Karen Taylor. The jockey, Johnny Kruger. He'll be racing out of the 4th hole. Jean Kruger, who was controversial a couple of years back aboard his Mount Media when his trainer was Johnny Campo and questioned his judgment. We move to the number 6 horse, Macho Hombre. He'll be racing out of the 6th hole. The jockey is Lazaro Sawmell. The owners, J.D. King and H.J. Jornick, and he's by Razor Native out of Bonnie and Gay. The number 7 horse, as we move to him, is well-regarded, Sir. He'll be racing out of the 7th home. Billy Gavidia is the jockey. La Luna Stable, the owner. Leo Asparua is the trainer by Sir Ivor out of Hannah II. And moving on to the number 8 horse, Iron Constitution, a Virginia bred, out of the 8th hole. Jeffrey Anderson is the jockey. The owner is H.T. Mangurian Jr. The trainer is Tommy Root Sr. The breeding by Iron Ruler out of Watercress. The number 9 horse, as we move to him, must be closely watched. This is a late finisher, winner of 1 division of the Florida Derby. The name coined silver. The 9th hole, as I said, Buck Thornburg, the jockey, a veteran. C.B. Whitney, as Jim McKay mentioned, the owner. The trainer is Timmy Poole, the breeding by Herb Auger out of Silver Coin, and won 1 division, as I said, of the Florida Derby. Then in the number 10 hole, Ruthie's Native. Craig Perrette, the jockey, and he's a battler, competitive little fellow, already challenging Jean Kruger. Ruth Perlmutter, the owner, Gene Jacobs, the trainer. He calls Seattle Slew a freak. That's what he calls Secretariat. The breeding, Native Royalty out of Right About. Papalote is the next horse, number 11, racing out of the 11th hole. Jose Sanchez is the jockey. The owner, L.A. Noble. Osvaldo Canet is the trainer. Noblesse Oblige, the second. The sire, Julep, was the mare. And so we come finally to the number 12 horse, Caviar Kid, out of the 13th hole. Jerry Bailey, the jockey. The owner, Barbara Hutchins. The trainer, Larry Jennings, by 1 for all out of DuPage Lady. There they are, the horses in the post parade. Your view, Eddie?
Well, I'll tell you, Seattle Slew looks awful good. And, Howard, what you did say, in case Seattle Slew doesn't shape up to be the kind of horse we all think he is, I do like Corn Silver. He's a well-bred horse and really comes from behind. And, by the way, ran 2 seconds faster than Ruthie's Native in the split of the Florida Derby.
Okay, Eddie, and we'll see how he does out of the 4th hole. Trainer Billy Turney said he'd prefer him from the outside. We'll be back in a moment.
And in his short career has already dazzled the racing public in New York and Florida. In winning the Champagne Stakes last fall at Belmont, he set a record for the race. Let's look now at his only outing so far in 1977. Breaking from the gate on the rail in an allowance race at Hialeah on March 9th, watch him as he goes to a new track record for 7 furlongs and a most impressive victory. He's owned by Karen Taylor, a former airline stewardess, and the wife of Mckay Taylor, a third-generation lumberman from White Swan, Washington. On the advice of a veterinarian friend, Dr. Jim Hill, the Taylors bought Seattle Slew at a Kentucky yearling sale for $17,500. That's a very reasonable price for any quality horse, a steal for a horse who can run like Seattle Slew. His sire was Bold Reasoning, who won his first 7 starts in his own racing career, took the Jersey Derby and won 8 of 12 races overall. Bold Reasoning has died since the birth of Seattle Slew. The Colt's dam was my charmer. Eddie Arcaro, an astute observer, noticed one disturbing thing in this race, a tendency to twitch his tail. Now, often this means that a horse is about to stop, or at least that he's bothered by something. Well, obviously, Seattle Slew stopped for no one in this race, and the habit may be meaningless. Is Seattle Slew, though, another Secretariat? Well, the great tests are yet to come, but already he's won the Champagne in faster time than Mrs. Penny Tweedy's all-time champion. He has also run faster than Secretariat at 6 furlongs and here at 7 furlongs. Seattle Slew, the Kentucky-born speedster owned by Pacific Northwesterners, is ridden by a French jockey, Jean Cruguet, and trained by a Marylander, Billy Turner, Jr. Howard Cosell talked to the trainer earlier.
Billy, ever since the fabulous Secretariat, there has been a tendency every year as we approach the Triple Crown, beginning with the Flamingo, of course, to look at a horse and say, hey, maybe this one is another Secretariat. And that's already begun, as you know, with Seattle Slew. After Honest Pleasure won the Flamingo a year ago, Leroy Jolly said to me, he reminded me of Secretariat. Do you see any resemblance at this early stage between Seattle Slew and Secretariat?
Well, it's a little too early to compare him with Secretariat because he has to prove that. But they have much the same style of running. They break slowly and ease into stride, and once they get into their full stride, they have the same style of running. They outrun the sprinters and keep right on going. And running fast time.
Now, you're human, Billy, and you're still young. Do you find that in spite of yourself, trying to keep your own emotional stability, there's an excitement growing within you right now that you're thinking ahead to the Triple Crown and likening Seattle Slew in your own mind to Secretariat?
It's not so much the Triple Crown, it's the feeling that there's something different about this horse. He's different from even anything in my wildest dreams that I would ever train. And we've all seen a lot of good horses in the last few years, and this just may be one of them. He may prove to stack up with the best, and that's what I figure. But the races, the individual races that we may run in or may not run in are really beside the point. But this is a different kind of individual, I feel.
How do you know? Why do you get the feeling? The times?
Well, no, it's the authority in which he does things.
Now, the real nub of the matter when it comes to the Flamingo or any of the other great races before Seattle Slew is, can he maintain that extraordinary speed over the distance? The Derby, 1.25 miles, for instance. How can you get him to relax so that he doesn't use himself up too early?
The odd thing is, and you have to watch him run to really become a believer. When he's going that fast, he's going easily. He's taking something out of himself when you're restraining him. But he can go, he has a long stride, and when he's in that stride, everything comes easy, and it just keeps right on going. It's something to behold.
So it doesn't trouble you in a distance race if Seattle Slew goes out front early?
No.
All right, we're back live at the Hialeah racetrack. The horses are approaching the starting gate. A quick look at the odds. Seattle Slew, the number 5 horse, remains at 1-5. Coin Silver, presently the second choice at 7-1. Ruthie's Native is at 10-1 at this moment. The Levesque entry is at 16-1. Their number was 1 and 1A. Sir, the number 7 horse, is at 13-1. The horses gradually coming down the track toward the starting gate. Eddie, I didn't mention the other horses' prices. They're all very long outsiders indeed. Coin Silver has changed to 8-1. Ruthie's Native is at 10-1. Seattle Slew at 1-5. The Levesque entry is at 16-1 now. Sir is at 13-1. Sir, of course, the number 7 horse. And Billy Gavidia said at the Flamingo brunch the other day, he's giving nothing to anybody, Edward.
Well, I don't blame him. You know, naturally, when you're not on, if you're not on a horse, the favorite, of course, the great Seattle Slew, what do? You pray to have something happen, and that's coming from behind, having the two horses maybe kill themselves off and take a shot on coming behind and picking them both up.
I mentioned earlier that Billy Turner at the breakfast Thursday morning suggested he'd rather have had an outside hole than where he is at the number 4.
I couldn't understand that, Howard. If I was on Seattle Slew, I would want him right where he is. Number 4, you have a short run to this turn. He doesn't have to lose any ground, although the jockey, Jean Preakness, told you and I both that he is not a fast breaker, that it takes him 4 or 5 strides to get started.
Which might account for some of Billy Turner's misgivings.
That is correct. He'd rather have him out there probably to keep him clear, but I don't think that's going to affect him. I think he's got enough speed, quality speed, to have a position 1-2 going into this turn, and that's going to be it.
You always understood, perhaps more than any jockey, the value of a quick start with a speed horse. And in the match race between Nashua and Swaps, when you were on Nashua, you stole that race coming out of the gate against the shoe, didn't you?
Well, that's right, but match races, of course, the lead is very important, but when you have horses in behind you, you've got to not make damn sure that you don't set up the race for some come-from-behind horse and kill one another off. Now, Forget is a good rider.
Now, Coin Silver, however, number 9 horse, is such a fast finisher. He won his division of the Florida Derby in 2 seconds faster than Ruthie's Native won his division. And that, of course, means 10 lengths, 2 seconds.
10 lengths, that's a long ways, really. And I think if there is a horse that beats both of these horses, it would be Coin Silver.
All right, as our viewers can see, the horses are now going into the gate in their respective post positions. 4 horse being taken in right now. One after another, they'll go in. Trainer Billy Turner of Seattle Slew says, my horse knows his business. He knows what he's out there for. And there goes Seattle Slew, calmly, composedly, into his starting hole at the gate. One of the Levesque horses, Fort Prevel. Now, to a race caller veteran of 23 years on national television, the general manager of the track, Tommy Roberts, for the call of the race. Tommy?
Thank you very much, Howard. This field is facing the starter, Charlie K-Mac. They're moved into position. The gross purse, $139,000. The winner will get $90,000. Speed is what we're talking about today. The track record held by Honest Pleasure in the Flamingo Stakes, 146-4. For the track itself, 146-2, set by His Majesty. And the world mark held by Secretariat, 145-2, set in the Cup in 1973. They'll go around 2 turns on this 1 1/8 oval. Let's watch the start. K-Mac looks them right in the eye. They're off. The start is good. For the lead along the inside, Wine Treasure. From out of the number 4 spot, Seattle Slew challenges. Ruthie's Nader's trying to cross over. And let's watch them as they vie for position going into this clubhouse turn. Seattle Slew, of course, on the lead, is free of trouble. Everybody else seems to have maintained a good course. And as they come out of the clubhouse turn, Seattle Slew leads by a length. Wine Treasure is second, Chatsky third. Then in 4th place, it is Ruthie's Native, a gap of 2 lengths. Back to Papalotti, the supplementary nominee. Then on the outside, Caviar Kid with Sir. We drop back to Iron Constitution, Coin Silver running on the outside. Down the backstretch they go, and it's still Seattle Slew. They went to quarter in 22-2. The best time was 22-1 in this race. And it's still Seattle Slew setting the fractions, approaching the half-mile pole. They've gone a half mile in 45-1. The best record, 45-2, and still Seattle Slew shows the way. Wine Treasure is second. 3rd place belongs to Ruthie's Native. Chatsky is 4th. On the outside, Caviar Kid moving up with Coin Silver. Down on the rail it is Papalotti. But now, jockey Jean Truguet decides to try and steal the race. And he pulls away by 6, by 7, by 8, by 9. Seattle Slew in 3/4, 109, trying the mark of Honest Pleasure. And as they come to the 5/16 pole, now for the quarter pole, it's Seattle Slew by himself. The rest of the field nowhere. Let's watch the clock. Seattle Slew straightening away in front. Coin Silver would come from behind horse, is way on the outside, but closest to him, here comes Chivoli on the rail. And next in line, it is Fort Prevel. Coin Silver's not going to get anything. Seattle Slew is in front. And as they say in rocking chair ride, for jockey Jean Truguet, Seattle Slew with his ears picked, being eased at the
the finish, and here's the time, 1:47.2. Seattle Slew wins it. Then came Gibali, Fort Prevel, Caviar Kid, Iron Constitution, Coin Stover, True Statement, Macho Hombre. Then after that it was Jatsky, Papalote, Sir, Ruthie's Native, and Wine Treasure last as they complete that mile and an eighth, as we said, in 1:47.2. The average time for the Flamingo, 1:49.3. Now back to Jim Mckay.
All right, Tommy, we have a photo for second place, but there was that fantastic performance by Seattle Slew. It looked like Jean Cruguet started to ease him a bit toward the finish because he was actually ahead of the track record, or the Flamingo record. As Tommy indicated, at the half mile, he was even with it at the three-quarter mile. However, at the mile, he fell a hair behind and then slowed up considerably as he came down the home stretch. But Seattle Slew, the horse owned by the people from the Pacific Northwest, only 3.5 years in racing they have been, has made a most impressive debut at the distance of 1 mile and an eighth. Remember, he had never run this distance before. Ahead of him lies 1.25 miles in the Kentucky Derby, 1 mile and 3/16 in the Preakness Stakes, and that long, almost endless 1.5 miles in the Belmont Stakes in June. The photo's still being held here at Hialeah, so we're going to take a commercial break, but then we'll be back for the official word.
There's the winner of the Flamingo Stakes, Seattle Slew. Not in Flamingo record time, not in track record time, but oh so impressively, the horse won breezing under the handling of Jockey Jean Cruguet. Now, I'm with Eddie Arcaro. Let's take a look at the horse finishing in slow motion, Eddie.
Well, the jockey naturally is easing him up, Howard, and I don't blame him. He's got a long ways to go before the other races, and why take more out of him than you have to? Setting records does not get, isn't always beneficial. You're taking a lot out of him.
Now let's look at the second place finish. It's now official. Jean-Louis Levesque's entry finished second and third. 1A is second as Gibali, and Fort Prevel was third. Now let's look at the entire race in replay from the beginning, Mr. Arcaro, and let's analyze it. Beginning with the fact that Seattle Slew out of the fifth hole had no trouble.
Well, he didn't break too well, but then you see picked it up very quick. And as I said before, he not only has speed, he has quality speed. And that's actually going to make him go as far as I think, go the distance.
Right you are. There he takes the lead. I had mistakenly said out of the fifth hole. He is horse number 5. He came out of the fourth hole. Now, as we watch, having negotiated the clubhouse turn, as we watch Seattle Slew open up distance between himself and the ensuing horse, it struck me, Eddie, that maybe those fractions were too fast early on because our viewers will watch Seattle Slew open up a huge lead going into the far turn.
Well, the only thing, and we can't tell, Howard, until we ask the jockey, is why he let him open up so many lengths up going into the half-mile pole. He must have opened up 8 or 9 lengths. Why would he let him do it at that stage of the game? And I think you'll see it coming up here. He looks like he turns him loose. Why so early?
In other words, the horse would have had more left and might have had better fractions at the finish.
That is awful early to move on any horse when you have so much horse underneath you, and we'll have to naturally ask Cruguet why. In other words, what I'm saying is he is further in front there than he eventually won by.
All right. Huge lead coming into the stretch, and that's when the easing up process began. They still haven't posted the results as official, but they have posted, of course, Seattle Slew is the easy winner.
Now he's looking back, though, Howard, and he starts easing him up. You can see he just wants to make sure that nobody's making a run out at him, and he is absolutely letting him canter down to the finish. So that's why them horses look as if they were closing on him.
And the Jean-Louis Levesque entry, finishing second and third respectively. But still, the board has not been posted as official. However, I doubt that there'll be any objection, any inquiry of any sort.
The only thing that was in his way was the racetrack.
So now what they'll be saying, Eddie, is simply this. Well, the horse didn't have the numbers of His Majesty, which owns the track record here for the 1 1/8 distance, 1:46.2. Or Honest Pleasure, a year ago, 1:46.4. So they'll be saying, why compare him then with Secretariat?
Well, you can't. I wouldn't go by that. I think that once he turned for home, and they had run the first 3/4 mile in 9 at that stage, he felt, well, why take any more out of him than I have to? Because let's face it, in the back of his mind is the Kentucky Derby.
Just 6 weeks away. As Jean Cruguet goes right by us, we'll seek to get Billy Turner over here. I wonder if you'd speculate as to why they haven't posted these results as official. Oh, the jockey has not weighed in, of course.
That is correct. He hasn't taken a deep breath, Howard.
Mckay, the moment he weighs in, it'll be counted as official. Big smile on the face of Karen Taylor and her husband, Billy Taylor.
He just looks like he's been out for a light gallop, doesn't he?
Okay, Ed, we'll be right back.
We're back at Hialeah, and there is the official winner of the 1977 Flamingo Stakes, Seattle Slew, on his way to the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont, all lying ahead. And, of course, we'll be in Kentucky that first Saturday in May, on May the 7th, for this year's running of the Kentucky Derby. He becomes the big favorite at this point in the winner's circle with his owners, Mckay and Karen Taylor. And there now are the official prices, $240, $220, and